Hello, I'm Harrison Barconnor. This is number 0763, the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, and it comes to you right now.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
Now, it's time for an eclectic mix of interviews and some of the oddest news stories you'll ever hear. It's the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Hey there, hi there, ho there! Peter Anthony Holder here with you, and yes, this is indeed another edition of the Stuff File program, number 0763. And coming up on this edition of the Stuff File program, you'll meet Doug Worple, who along with his wife Becca are operators of what's called Golden Retriever Experience.
Show people how to play with the dogs. They live for the ball. They love to chase it. So we have about a half hour of playing ball with them until they kind of tucker out. And then this time of year we have an event on wood-burning fireplaces. We serve hot chocolate and everybody goes in and the dogs come in and we close the doors and the dogs just work the crowd for like hugs and cuddles. And then my wife Becca is a professional photographer. So throughout the event she's taking pictures, but we also stage a couple of photos. So everybody that comes walks away with a picture of themselves and the big happy of Goldens.
Peter Sachs is the author of the political conspiracy thriller Libertyland.
At MIT, he's a professor and he meets his lover, a very bright young student. She doesn't really believe in that libertarian stuff that he believes, but she does love him. For his 40th birthday, she writes something that she calls the Libertarian Manifesto. In this book, she's really poking fun at libertarian ideas that we should privatize everything. She extrapolates what life would be like in America if we did realize this libertarian paradise. Yeah, he laughs and thinks it's funny, but he takes it seriously.
Science writer Andrew Fazekas, the night sky guy, is back to talk about this month's upcoming solar eclipse. Where is the so-called direct path of totality?
Starts off in New Mexico, going through southern Texas, up through southern Arkansas, Ohio, places like Cleveland, Ohio will experience it, northern New York State, then into Vermont and into Canada, into southern Ontario and southern Quebec. And this path is about 200 kilometers wide. And in that path that I'm referring to is where people will be able to witness the entire disk of the sun being covered by the moon.
And there's lots and lots of Stuff File news and, of course, an idiot of the day. The guest slater, the person who told you this was show number 0763, was Harrison Barconnor, who is a model train enthusiast and a popular YouTuber who shares his model railroading expertise with thousands on his page SMT Mainline. By the way, he was a guest on the program. You can go back to show number 0747, which is where he was a guest, and listen to the entire conversation. And thank you very much, Harrison, for doing the guest slate on this edition of the Stuff File program, a show that is listener-supported, fan-funded radio that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Well, let's get right to the stuff. In 2024, California started prohibiting police departments from sharing photos of suspects in nonviolent crimes. Accordingly, the Murrieta Police Department started using emojis, characters from movies, and most recently, Lego head images to cover the faces of suspects when they posted on social media. But now, Lieutenant Jeremy Durant said the Lego heads have to go. The Lego group reached out to us and respectfully asked us to refrain from using their intellectual property in our social media content, which we understand and will comply with. So, the company basically said, Lego my Lego. The police can't use Lego's intellectual property, but can Lego use the police's intellectual property?
The new police collection from Lego City. Each set sold separately.
I guess so. A 47-year-old man was arrested in Parowan, Utah on March 17th after multiple drivers reported him from the I-15 highway, Callers said the man's pickup truck had red and blue flashing lights, and they were getting other vehicles to move out of the way. What tipped them off? The pickup also had a construction company logo on the side. The suspect indicated he was only trying to get through traffic faster, not pull anyone over. He also tested positive for cannabis, amphetamines, and methamphetamines. And he had a small bag of white powder that he said he uses, quote, to stay awake while driving, unquote. He was booked into the Iron County Jail. Oh, good Lord, all those drugs in his system? Please tell me that whatever he was building will now get extra scrutiny from the building inspectors. Well, it's time once again for the Mayor Larry Vaughn Bad Judgment in Leadership Award.
Now, if you fellas are concerned about the beaches, you do whatever you have to make them safe. But those beaches will be open for this weekend.
And we have a two for this time around. Story number one. A state Senate panel in South Carolina is investigating a mystery involving $1.8 billion. The huge sum has accumulated over the past decade in a bank account, but authorities don't know where the money is coming from or where it's supposed to go, said Governor Henry McMaster. It does not inspire confidence, but the good news is no money was lost. Okay, what I want to know is, if they don't know where the money came from, then how do they know that none of it was lost? I guess this is a state's version of finding money in an old coat or in the couch cushions. Anyway, meanwhile, state officers are pointing fingers at each other, and lawmakers are annoyed that the money is sitting idle while requests from state agencies are going unfulfilled. Said McMaster, there is no need to hurry up and try to spend it. Meanwhile, in item number 2 in Oakland, California, 102-year-old Victor Silva Sr. received a citation in March from the city about the graffiti on his fence. If he didn't remove it, he'd face an $1,100 fine plus $1,277 for each failed reinspection. Before Silva started using a wheelchair, he'd paint over the graffiti himself. Now, Victor Silva Jr., who is 70, has that task. Said the relatively younger Silva, it's hard to keep up with it because as soon as we get it painted, it's going to be graffitied all over again, and it won't last. The family owns a business nearby that's been broken into 3 times in the last year. Said Jr., it's hard to understand where our tax dollars are going. They can't answer 911, but they can come out and hassle you about a fence. The city inspector is expected to review the case and, most likely, cancel the citation. Again, most likely. Yeah, who knows? Maybe, like South Carolina, the city of Oakland should check out all of their own bank accounts to see if they have any, cash in the cushion, so to speak. And that's why these two stories together have earned the Mayor Larry Vaughn Bad Judgment in Leadership Award.
Let's be reasonable, huh? This is not the time or the place to perform some kind of a half-assed autopsy on a fish.
And let's get to our first guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program. Doug Worple and his wife Becca sold their Cincinnati home in the midst of the pandemic and ended up on a farm in Vermont with their 4 golden retrievers. This led to a business. They came up with the idea to socialize their pups through the Golden Retriever Experience, in which people can visit their farm and play with their dogs and those of their neighbors. Doug joins us via Zoom from Jeffersonville, Vermont. Hi, Doug.
Hey, how you doing today?
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. Let's go back to when this all began, and that is, in the pandemic, you decided to sell your home and move to Vermont. Why Vermont in particular?
Well, actually, there was a step in between. So we sold our house and then we bought an RV and we traveled the country during the pandemic. We called it kind of the Great National Park and Real Estate Tour. So we, it wasn't like you'd go to a city and go shopping and try all the great restaurants. Nobody was, interacting. So, but that didn't change the natural beauty of the national parks. And everywhere we went, we were like, well, could you see us living here? In the places that we liked, we looked at real estate and primarily looking at things that were properties that had enough space or land for us to be doing something outside. We looked at an avocado farm, we looked at a cherry farm, we looked at it like a cattle ranch. Like my former job was in advertising, and I wanted to be doing something outside, more tangible. And we looked at a lot of stuff. We drove 17,000 miles. We went through 35 different states, kind of did it in a methodical way. And we were in the Northeast that fall and saw this property. After much contemplation, there was a lot more here to bite off than we were kind of initially looking for, because there's a vineyard, there's 200 orchard trees. We've got a sugar woods that now has 4,500 taps. We have beehives. My wife's a beekeeper now. We have 30 hives. And any kind of one of those would have kind of scratched the itch that I was looking for, she was looking for, in terms of doing something outside and making something. But all of them together were a little bit overwhelming. But we decided, well, we don't have to do everything. And if we do everything, we don't have to do everything well, that we have the grace to make some mistakes and see what happens.
Okay, so before you embarked on buying this farm in Vermont, did either one of you either grow up in a rural situation or live in a rural situation at some point? Or were you city slickers who decided farm life was for me? In other words, was this a modern day telling of Green Acres?
Yeah, it's a little bit like Gabor and Oliver, right? Oliver. But I grew up in Iowa. I did a little bit of field work as a teenager, just because that was the way, like, you made summer money. And my dad worked at John Deere. My grandparents were on farms, but no, nothing. We were both city people for the most part. So all of this is new. And even what I did in Iowa, I mean, had nothing to do with what we do with now. It was all row crop stuff.
Okay, so let's get to the dogs. You have these 4 golden retrievers. First of all, did they travel with you in the RV as well? Did you have those from your days in Cincinnati?
So we had 3 dogs in Cincinnati. 2 of them joined us in the RV. One was older. His name's Boo. He stayed with my wife's parents while we traveled. And then when we moved here, we got a 4th, Uncle Lenny. So we had Boo, Dewey, Uncle Lenny, and Mar. And Mar is actually a Black Lab Bernese Mountain Dog mix. So she's the Black Lab of the family, as we say.
So when did you come up with the idea of the Golden Retriever experience? How did that begin for you?
It's an interesting, there's kind of 2 aspects to that. The first is, we've always loved golden retrievers, and as we were thinking about having that additional space, one of the big benefits of having it was so that we could have more retrievers. And we've always thought it would be great to do something where we would host people and we would have all the golden retrievers and they would be part of whatever the experience was, a farm tour or coming to make wine or whatever, but you'd be surrounded by the Goldens. When we were looking at real estate, when we came to this property, on the way here, we were in Stowe and we saw Dana Many and his wife Susan, who owned Butternut Goldens, and he was driving around with a pickup full of golden retrievers. And my wife's like, pull over, right? You've got an RV. It's not like you just pull off to the side of the road. So I found a parking lot, pulled in. She chased him down at an intersection, introduced herself, and just to try to understand what he was doing. And he lives on a farm as well. And he takes the dogs out in the pickup almost every day, if not every day, and takes them to, it could be a microbrewery or a restaurant or to the ski slopes, but just so they meet people. Because if you don't get the dogs out and meet people on a farm, then they don't see anybody. And then that's that socialization thing that we were talking about. So we became friends after we moved here. It took a while for us to see him again, because it was the middle of COVID. But as we became friends, they're like, could we host a puppy event at your house where their puppies meet their new prospective parents? And we're like, yeah, we'd love that. And that was amazing. The people loved it. And we were like, we've always thought about doing something where people would interact with the golden retrievers, and would that be something you'd be up for with your adult dogs? They had 14 adult dogs at that time. They have 13 now. And they were like, yeah, we've always thought it would be great to do something. We just didn't have a place to do it. So we very much of like minds. And so kind of our vision for what we might do with golden retrievers really was able to accelerate, because they already have a very well-trained, completely socialized group of adult dogs that are used to being around tons of strangers and love to play. And so last September, we did the puppy event, and then we were like, okay, let's put a couple of dates on the calendar in October, and we did. And it was like crickets. There was nobody booked anything, and then someone scraped some of the content from our Instagram account where we had announced that we were doing this and put it in things to do in Vermont during fall foliage, and that blew up, and it had 4 or 5 million views, and we sold out overnight. I mean, we literally went to bed with maybe 2 reservations and woke up the next day, everything was sold out. And so we started adding dates, and the publicity has continued to grow, and everything is always sold out. And what we kind of are figuring out is how much can we how much do we want to do this? Because if we put it on the calendar, it sells out. And first we were like, as many days as we could, and then we started to get a little bit exhausted because we still had all those other things to do here on the farm, and balancing everything became a little bit tricky. But we're on top of it now.
So for people who want to go through the Golden Retriever experience, what exactly does that pertain to? How much does it cost? And how many puppies or how many Golden Retrievers are there? I mean, there's your 4, there's the ones from AKC Golden Retrievers. What total is that as far as Goldens are concerned?
So typically there's 13 to 15 adult Goldens. A couple of their Goldens, butternut Goldens, are a little bit older. So sometimes they're up for coming, sometimes they're not. With dogs, it's just like people. Sometimes one will be sick, one just had a cyst removed, and is in no shape to interact with people yet. But 13 to 15 adults. Since we've been doing this, there haven't been any litters of puppies, so we haven't had that experience yet. But what people can expect when they come is the dogs, the big group of dogs, the ones that don't live here on the farm, are going to arrive in a pickup truck that's been specially designed for them to travel in, and their heads are all going to be sticking out the back. It's the coolest thing, and they know when they're in the truck and people come up, they're very calm and they're just happy to be cuddled. But then when they see the tennis racket or the tennis ball and they know it's time to play, the tailgate on the truck drops, they fire out of there. It's like popping a cork out of a bottle of champagne. Dana and Susan kind of show people how to play with the dogs. They live for the ball. They love to chase it. So we have about a half hour of playing ball with them until they, kind of tucker out. And then, this time of year we have an event barn with wood-burning fireplaces. We serve hot chocolate, and everybody goes in, and the dogs come in, and we close the doors, and the dogs just work the crowd for hugs and cuddles. And then my wife, Becca, is a professional photographer, so throughout the event, she's taking pictures, but we also stage a couple of photos. So everybody that comes, walks away with a picture of themselves or their group with just them and the big happy of Goldens. So everybody has a keepsake or memento.
And what's the reaction from the folks who are either after they've completed this or even during the time that they enjoy the Golden Retriever experience?
Everybody's incredibly happy to the point of tears sometimes. It is the best time. I mean, we hear all the time, this is the best day ever. We will have people who visit who've recently lost a dog or grew up with a dog but can't have one now. And they're just kind of overwhelmed with emotion. It's an amazing setting. We sit within kind of unobstructed and nothing between us and Mount Mansfield. So you have this beautiful mountain backdrop, ponds in between. And the dogs, the butternut Goldens, they're so well trained, they're not wearing collars. And so, they pile out, and it's just these dogs that are running free. And it's amazing. And people love it. People giggle. It's just, when they come out of the truck, people gasp. It's just almost kind of overwhelming in how happy a moment it is.
Your business must be great business for Butternut Hill Golden Retrievers, because I'm assuming that after spending part of an afternoon or a day up at your location talking or playing with the dogs, that everybody who doesn't have one wants one.
Yeah, what's interesting, it's for sure the case, but what's interesting, I would have guessed before we ever started this that most of the people that would come would have golden retrievers and love golden retrievers the way that we do, and they just would want to be surrounded by a bigger group of them. But I'd say a huge chunk of folks, they're coming from Montreal or Boston or New York City, and they're living in situations where they can't have dogs. And so this is a way for them to get that fix and that fill. And then there are people who are kind of between dogs, and for sure they want to know the next time the butternut family is going to have a litter. There's a lot of people ask if they can adopt, one of the dogs that are there that day. But the thing is, these dogs are either our family members or their family members, right? Like it's like asking to adopt someone's child just because you had a play date with them. It's like, no, that's not what this is about. Like, we're not trying to adopt out these dogs. When there are puppies, of course, but this is us just sharing what makes us happy with other people.
So for people who want more information, they can go to your website, which is goldendogfarm.com. I assume that they can book times and even pay for the experience right from your website?
Yeah, everything is bookable. You make a reservation right from the website. It's super simple.
I would also assume that you're very, very busy. So if someone listening to this right now said, gee, this is something I want to do, how far ahead do they have to book?
We've had a wave of great publicity. And so we're in the last issue of People magazine.
Which is where I saw you, by the way. Yes.
Yeah. And just prior to that, we were on Good Morning America about 2 weeks ago. So our calendar really booked up fast. So if people want to visit, there are some summer dates out there. Anything in the short term, April, early May, all of that, like every date we have on the calendar is already sold out. But as you look to the summer and fall, which are prime times to visit Vermont, and particularly to visit this part of Vermont, they'll definitely be able to find a time that hopefully will work for everybody.
Well, congratulations on your success, and congratulations with the Golden Retriever experience. And Doug, thank you very, very much for being on the show with us.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on today. We love telling our story, and we love sharing it with your listeners. So thank you. I really do appreciate you reaching out.
Doug Worple, who along with his wife Becca run the Golden Retriever experience on their Vermont farm. You can go to my website at thestuffwile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0763, and you'll find the link to their site where you can find the pricing and dates and book your very own experience. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
There's still more guests, more news, and an idiot of the day coming your way on the Stuff File program. Stay tuned. The Stuff File program is a listener-supported, fan-funded radio show that depends on you for our success. Join us at patreon.com to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. Sign up and find out about our rewards program. Being a patron doesn't have to be a long-term commitment. There's absolutely no obligation. You could join today and end whenever you'd like, but the time we have your support would be so greatly appreciated. We'd also love to hear your thoughts about the show and even your ideas for rewards. Join us for the ride. Join us at patreon.com/thestuffileprogram.
Malik here. Wow, listen to this really happening liner music. That's radio jargon. I'm hip to the room. While I bust to move and get down with my bad self, let me tell you, you're listening to Peter Anthony Holder, the hippest dude in the crib. Yo, rap unk.
And still to come on the program, we'll talk to the author of the political conspiracy theory thriller called Libertyland. Plus, Andrew Fazekas, the night sky guy, is back to talk about this month's solar eclipse. We also have an idiot of the day coming your way a little later on, and much more in Stuff File News right here, right now. A woman who just wanted to watch a live stream of a funeral became a viral sensation after she accidentally left the camera on while she took a shower. The Zoom broadcast was also being shown on a big screen to in-person mourners at the church in North London. The funeral was for a father of 3 who had died of cancer. Even worse, the woman apparently turned up at the wake later with no idea what she had done until, quote, 10 minutes later she was crying her eyes out, unquote, as one mourner said. Well, that's a scene to rise the dead. Meanwhile, multi-millionaire longevity guru Brian Johnson is dead serious about his plans to start a nation of anti-agers where pizza and booze would be illegal. The 46-year-old biohacker with millions of fans and critics has made a name for himself for the strange attempts to de-age himself, such as swapping blood with his 17-year-old son and tracking his erections. What, does he have some sort of weird spreadsheet for that? Anyway, his next trick, he plans to found his own Don't Die nation state for fellow anti-agers, welcoming people from across the world who are fighting to live longer and pool its citizens' resources to help everyone secure access to the tests, therapies, and supplements they need to help de-age their bodies. Eventually, it would also negotiate with other nation-states for special access to treatments. Citizens would have to forego eating junk food as it would be considered an act of violence. If, for any reason, you wish to follow this guy into his own little world, and you have a moment of clarity where you question just how far you've gone over the line, if you're looking for that line, look behind you and use binoculars. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, dairy cows in Kansas and Texas have tested positive for bird flu. While the virus is affecting cows in those states and in New Mexico, officials say there is no danger to the commercial milk supply because of production regulations and pasteurization, which kills viruses. USDA officials think the cows caught the virus from wild birds. They appear to have cold-like symptoms, but typically recover within 10 days. Gee, what do you give a cow for a cold?
You got a cold tonight? Put NyQuil to work.
And finally, in this section of Stuff File News, before we get to our next guest here in this edition of the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder, remember the life-saving door at the end of Titanic? The one that Rose and Jack couldn't both fit on? At Heritage Auctions in Dallas on March 23rd, the balsa wood panel used in the movie sold for $718,750 to an anonymous buyer. Okay, let's be accurate here. The prop is often mistakenly referred to as a door. However, the ornate structure was in reality part of the door frame just above the first-class lounge entrance. Now that we have that all cleared up, the auction liquidated a large treasure trove of items from Planet Hollywood, including Indiana Jones's whip and Jack's axe from The Shining. No word yet on whether the new owner has tested the prop's width to see if Jack might have, after all, survived. Who could forget young Rose's last words to Jack?
I'll never let go. I promise.
She said as she let the Jaxicle drift off to the bottom of the ocean. I'm guessing that later in life, Rose also hogged the bed sheets at night. Anyway, let's get to our second guest here on this edition on the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. Peter Sachs is an author, journalist, and social critic. He recently released a political conspiracy thriller called Libertyland. Peter joins us via Zoom from California. Hi, Peter.
Anthony, how you doing? Peter Anthony.
Just tickety-boo. Thanks very much for being on the program with us. You've written several books. This is your first nonfiction, or fiction book, rather. It's a thriller called Libertyland. And I'm just curious to know, since you're someone who spends a lot of time discussing politics and social situations, the fact that you created this book, is this a situation where sometimes it's better to get the medicine with honey as opposed to a hard fact book on situations that deal with conspiracy theories?
Yeah, great question. I think in my case, you're right. I'm like everyone else, I guess, observing what's gone on in our political environment the last several years. And there have been really dozens of nonfiction books that have come out to assess the situation. And to me, I could have done something like that. But to me, writing a novel that isn't necessarily about what's going on per se, but really kind of captures the zeitgeist of the American life in 2024 with respect to our political environment and the choices and fears that people are facing right now.
First of all, tell us a little bit about what the story is, the story in Libertyland.
Well, it's basically a story about a guy who grows up thinking that he wants to be an Ayn Rand hero. At MIT, he's a professor, and he meets his lover, who is a very bright young student from Brooklyn, and they fall in love, but she doesn't really believe in that libertarian stuff that he believes, but she does love him. And for his 40th birthday, she writes something that she calls the Libertarian Manifesto. And in this book, she's really poking fun at libertarian ideas that we should privatize everything. And she extrapolates what life would be like in America if we did realize this libertarian paradise, so to speak. Yeah, he laughs and thinks it's funny, but he takes it seriously and shows it to an old buddy that he grows up with, whose father is old money Wall Street, and they believe this libertarian stuff. So they fund this secret society, and over the generations, it evolves into a conspiracy of billionaires to literally destroy the United States government and spin off the assets of the American people to these billionaire owners who will then run the economy. Needless to say, it's a thriller, so there are obstacles to this conspiracy, and the obstacle comes in the form of one former Navy SEAL named Carson McCready, who was raised to love America, not in the kind of the uber patriotic way that, as a brand, patriotism as a brand, but as a genuine love for American democracy and freedom. And he ends up thwarting or joining forces with some other people, including the original person who wrote the Liberation Manifesto, to stop this conspiracy.
Now that you described the story, this is why I asked the very first question and talking about giving the medicine with honey as opposed to with vinegar. The reason why I made that analogy is because there are really kind of three groups of people. There are the people who have watched everything that has taken place since January 6th and are aghast by it and want justice taken and want to follow every information that comes from those people being tried. And then there are those on the other side who are the conspiracy theorists who think they're political prisoners. And then there's an entire swath of people who just want this whole issue to go away and, for lack of a better term, want to put their head in the sand. They don't want to hear of any of it anymore because they're gone past it. And the reason why I asked the question is I was just wondering, when you wrote the book, who were you thinking about as far as your audience was concerned, as to who would want to read the book, knowing that there is, a large swath of people who just want to back away from this issue completely?
Well, I wasn't thinking really about in those terms so much. When I write a book, I come from a place of, I write a book that I'd love to read. And if a book came along that kind of, in a way, made fun of the situation and made me think about my, we don't get a free ride as a citizen of the country. As a citizen, we have responsibilities. Citizenship isn't free and freedom isn't free. And I don't care who you are, what camp you're in, that if you don't have time to take a few moments and think about what your role as a citizen in a democracy is, then, go to Russia, go to somewhere where, the idea of people who complain about being free and their freedom and tyranny in America, I say, go someplace that is really tyrannical, where you really don't have the right to vote, where your freedoms are threatened every day of your life, and come back to America and appreciate it for what it is. But at the same time that you appreciate it, consider your responsibilities as a free citizen to take care of that democracy. So my idea was to write an entertaining book that people could, have fun with and debate over and maybe think about what's going on without too much pressure to do so.
So do you feel that there's a large point of the population that is living the free democracy life, but not necessarily protecting and preserving that life?
Absolutely. I think that's partly why we've gotten into the situation we're in, is that I think the education system has failed society in that we don't even require civics in schools anymore. People don't know how the government works or how citizenship works and what our responsibilities are as citizens. And, we're all part of a team. And the hero of the book, a former Navy SEAL, his son asked him once, what was it like being the leader of this platoon? You were the hero. Wasn't that a lot of pressure and, this and that? And he tells his son, I wasn't the hero. You can't think of it that way. The team is the hero. What we do, what I did, there were people in my team that were stronger than me, smarter than me, but my role was to keep that team together. And without the team, we're all nothing. Every individual in that team is nothing without team. So as Americans, we would do well to take some of that advice and heed some of that advice that, as a country, we're nothing without the whole. We're just a, scattershot bunch of states with its own self-interest. Abraham Lincoln would say we're stronger as a union than we are as individual states, and we fought a civil war over that. Well, let's hope we don't have to do another one to make the same point.
As I mentioned, you have written several nonfiction books, and this is your first fiction novel. As a result, I'm just curious to know, is it kind of like a different muscle as a writer? What did you have to relearn or think about when writing this book as opposed to writing the factual books that you had done in the past?
Well, there's still a lot of research. If you're going to explore and state facts, the facts still have to be correct. But I always grew up knowing that I would write novels, even though I spent a career as an economist, as a teacher, as a newspaper journalist. So writing the novel is really a culmination of my dream. And it's much harder to tell a story that weaves together a plot and develop believable characters and make their motivations believable. It's much more difficult than nonfiction. You don't have to really convince the reader as much, ask them to suspend their disbelief in nonfiction. So it's much more challenging to write fiction, but the truths that you can explore are much deeper, I think, when you allow creativity to help you explore the truths that you would only be able to do in a strictly factual way in the nonfiction world.
In the nonfiction world, the fact that it is fact-based, does that give you, as a writer, as opposed to fiction, does it give you a sort of guardrails that you have to follow? And those guardrails or training wheels is another example. Training wheels that you have to follow as opposed to free riding your bike on your own kind of thing when you're writing fiction?
Yeah, that's a funny analogy. In a way, yeah. I mean, the nonfiction, in a way, served as great training for my fiction writing. With writing a novel, the training wheels are off, so to speak, because you can, instead of staying on the streets and being safe, you can take risks in fiction and go off trail. And that's that the creative reward is what I find so attractive about writing fiction.
Now that you've written your first fiction novel, is there a second one on the pipeline?
Yeah, there's a sequel possible with this one. And also I'm writing another novel. This one's about a man who creates the first sentient AI. It's told from the point of view of his great niece in the future. And in the future, the idea of a sentient AI is forbidden. So it's a speculative fiction novel about artificial intelligence.
Well, now that Libertyland is out, would you like it to be seen as either a movie or a television series of some kind?
Yeah, I write visually. So the way that I tell stories is by basically writing what's in the pictures in my head. So I wrote it as a movie in a way. So it would be, to me, a perfect Netflix series or a film. So, yeah, sometimes I think about who would play the lead characters.
Who would you like to see playing the lead characters?
The lead character, the former Navy SEAL, I once thought it would be Christian Bale because he's a very he's very nuanced in the way he acts, and he doesn't overact, it seems. But there have been a few others that have been suggested to me. Who's the actor who played in The Bourne Conspiracy?
Matt Damon?
Yeah, Matt Damon. Somebody said that Matt Damon would be the perfect choice.
Well, congratulations on your book, Libertyland. It's out available now. I thank you very, very much for being on the program with us. And when your second book comes out, will you come back on the program with us?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for being on the show with us.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Peter Sachs, author of Libertyland. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com, check out the show number for this program, which is show number 0763, and you'll find the link to Peter's site, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder.
Got something for the mailbag? Drop Peter a line. He'd love to hear from you. Send your email to mailbag@thestuffile.com. And remember, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's mailbag@thestuffile.com. Or catch up with him on Twitter or Facebook. There's more Stuff File coming your way in just a few moments.
Here's a brief word about our show and my book. If you become a regular Patreon patron of the Stuff File program, I'll give you an e-version of my book, Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. It's easy to do. Just go to patreon.com and become a patron to help make this show an even bigger and better radio experience. So, join Patreon and claim your copy of Great Conversations, my interviews with 2 men on the moon and a galaxy of stars. Sign up at patreon.com/The Stuff File program.
From our studios in Montreal, Canada, and going out to the rest of the world, this is the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder. Now, the Stuff File presents Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. It's radio that's out of this world.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy, is a member of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada and the author of National Geographic's Backyard Guide to the Night Sky, and also National Geographic's Stargazer's Atlas, the ultimate guide to the night sky. And Andrew, there is a major phenomenon that will be happening this month that people have been buzzing about for quite some time. Well, not everybody. The Mayans are still quite afraid of it. But I'm talking about the solar eclipse, Andrew.
That's right. This is the biggest celestial event of the year, definitely. So, of course, for all North Americans, Canada, U.S., Mexico, we're going to all be in the direct path of the shadow of the moon as the sun gets eclipsed by our nearest neighbor. It is going to be the best show since 2017 was the last time we had an eclipse, solar eclipse like this, a total one. It's pretty much, I would say, the most dramatic celestial event that anyone can witness with the unaided eye.
Why does this seem to be bigger than past solar eclipses? Is there something particularly special about this one that makes it so?
Well, I think definitely, we're living in the 21st century. We have the internet. We are, totally inundated with technology and the ability to get information 24/7. That's one thing that makes this one different from others. It's going over North America and probably, I would say, the most densely populated region of the world that's technologically savvy, definitely. And there are a lot of large cities that are going to be in the direct path of totality of this solar eclipse. So just to set the scene, the path of totality that I'm talking about, that's referring to this pathway that runs across the continent from the southwest to the northeast in North America. So starts off in New Mexico, going through southern Texas, through cities like Austin, Dallas, up through southern Arkansas, Ohio, and places like Cleveland, Ohio will experience it, northern New York State, like the city of Buffalo, then into Vermont and into Canada, into southern Ontario and southern Quebec. And this path is about 200 kilometers wide. And in that path that I'm referring to is where people will be able to witness the entire disk of the sun being covered by the moon, so that your environment, the sky, turns dark for a precious few minutes. during what's called totality, or the maximum part of a solar eclipse. So everyone within that 200-kilometer wide pathway will witness that on April 8th. If you are on either side of that pathway, you will see what's called a partial eclipse. You won't get to see the entire sun disappear, only parts of it. So the farther you are away from it, the smaller the amount of the sun that is covered, the smaller the bite that the moon takes out of the sun.
And again, you mentioned that swath, that area. Is there any place, weather permitting, that is the best place to view it from? Or is everything in that swath that you mentioned prime real estate for watching the solar eclipse?
Well, if we wouldn't factor in the weather, all along that path is fantastic. If you can be inside that pathway, you're going to get a great show. But however, with that said, of course, the weather is the final determining factor of how enjoyable this event is for a person. And in this case, this time of the year, on April 8th, it's just generally a cloudy type time of the year for much of the North America. The best case, probably where most people are flocking right now to, is southern Texas. Like Austin, Texas is one of the prime places. If we look at the historical data for April 8th, meteorologically, about 20 to 30% chance of cloudy skies on April 8th for those in southern Texas. If you move to the other extreme of the continent in the northeast, in southern Ontario and Quebec particularly, at this time of the year, April 8th around then, it's about 60 to 70% chance of cloudy skies. So you can see, if we just do historical data, it just makes sense for anyone who's really keen on it and has the capability is to go as far southwest as possible to get those chances of clear skies.
What's the best way to see it safely?
Safely, yeah. I mean, you kind of need to protect your eyes when it comes to eclipses, especially the partial solar eclipse phase, which lasts about an hour and a half on either side of totality. So we're talking about 3 hours on average for you to protect your eyes. And that is, looking at the sun is never a good idea. That is very dangerous. You never should look at it with the unaided eye or using a telescope or binoculars. You can burn your retina, cause temporary or permanent blindness, and so you need protection, and you do that using solar eclipse glasses. These are basically specially fitted with what are called mylar filters. A mylar film basically cuts out 99.999% of the solar rays, making it very safe on the eyes. So you're looking through those glasses most of the show. As the sun gets covered more and more with the moon, you watch that through these safe solar filtered glasses. And then those moments of totality, when the entire disk of the sun is covered, that's when you take your glasses off. Now, depending on where you are in that path, the closer you are to the center line of the totality path, the longer that darkness, the totality part of the eclipse lasts. So it could last anywhere from a minute to up to 3.5 minutes. And it's that precious few minutes that you can take off those glasses and watch the sun being totally eclipsed. That's really the most dramatic part of the event. And it's really cool, the fact that you don't need any equipment to enjoy the most dramatic event. And, to see that is really something that's life-changing. It's a multi-sensory experience and something that everyone should have a chance to see at one time in their life, for sure.
One of the things I've never even thought of until actually just this moment is we spend a lot of time traveling, and when we spend a lot of time traveling, I mean, a lot of the world does, there are a heck of a lot of commercial pilots who are above the clouds. Is there anything that's being done to protect their eyes? I mean, they can't exactly fly with their eyes closed.
Right, yeah. As long as they don't look directly at the sun, they're fine. They would use sunshades, they have their sunglasses. As long as they don't look at the sun, that's fine. And, I have to say, Peter, it's not just during these special events of eclipses that this warning about the sun comes out. It's any time. Never look at the sun. There's nothing particularly more dangerous than any other time to look at the sun. It just is not a good idea. So I think pilots are they do what they normally do even during eclipses. The one thing I have to say, though, is that watching eclipse from 36,000 feet above the Earth, you can get a very interesting perspective of watching the shadow of the moon race across the cloud tops, if you can see that from above. It's a very unique perspective to be able to see that.
Now, you're heavily involved with Astronomers Without Borders, and they're doing something special for the eclipse, are they not?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited. Astronomers Without Borders is a registered nonprofit charitable organization based in the United States. They've been in existence since 2009, and they're basically in the business of doing good around the world using astronomy. So basically doing a lot of what we call resource sharing, bringing materials, educational materials, STEM education resources to teachers, classrooms around the world, outreach organizers of public events, of astronomical events. We bring telescopes to different places, educational materials, and part of what we also do is supply eclipse glasses. What we're doing for this April 8th eclipse is trying to collect as many glasses that we can after the event is done. Instead of them going into landfills, we're trying to be environmentally conscious and collect as many of these gently used eclipse glasses, have them sent to storage areas where they will be vetted by volunteers. Once they pass the muster and they're still in good condition, they will be repackaged in boxes and basically ready to be shipped in different parts of the world and in some underserved communities that just don't have the luxury of being able to have this special eyewear that protects them from solar rays to be able to watch safely solar eclipses that happen in different parts of the world. This is our second time around doing this. AWB did the same campaign, Recycling Eclipse Glasses campaign in 2017. We collected over 3 million glasses from 1,000 collection centers across the United States. And we've took the last 7 years to send those gently used eclipse glasses to communities around the world. And just last year, we finished the last batch. We would send them out to places like Sri Lanka, Philippines, Tanzania. We even sent them to Ethiopia. 50,000 glasses went to Ethiopia for a total solar eclipse back in 2021. We partnered with the United States State Department and the embassy there in Ethiopia and managed to put 50,000 of our glasses on a flight that was used during COVID to send medical supplies like hand sanitizers, masks for people there during COVID. And it was really amazing because, Peter, they were going around in the small villages with pickup trucks handing out these COVID supplies and our eclipse glasses because they wanted to make sure everyone gets a chance to see that special event. And it went perfectly. And that's just one example. And we're doing it again in 2024 on April 8th. We have collection centers around the United States and in Canada this time. These centers, they range from universities to recycling agencies, private companies, libraries are doing it, state parks are collecting for us. There'll be bins set up in different places. And we even have major corporation support from Warby Parker, which is a eyeglasses retailing company. And they have over 240 physical retail outlet stores across the U.S., most of them along the path of totality. And each of those retail stores will be collecting glasses on our behalf. We're really excited about that. And what's really cool is that they are going to be sent to a professional radio telescope facility in West Virginia called the Green Bank Observatory. And they're partnering with us, and they'll be doing vetting parties throughout the summer, vetting probably hundreds and hundreds of thousands of glasses for us and storing them until further notice and when we're ready to send them around the world.
Very quick, because we're just about out of time, two quick questions. You mentioned the period of totality. Of course, we're talking about April the 8th. Eastern time, is there a precise time that we are expecting this solar eclipse?
When we're talking about Eastern time, it starts around 2:15 p.m. Eastern time, and then the peak of it is around just before 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon is when we expect the maximum eclipse, and then another hour and a half of partial eclipse until the last bit of the moon leaves the surface of the sun. It's all up to the weather now. I suggest people plan, in the last few days of looking at different locations to stake out of where they can watch this safely. But it's going to be up to the weather to see where we're all going to be heading to watch this amazing event.
And should we happen to miss it for whatever reason, either the weather is bad or one's too busy, when's the next one?
Well, if you're willing to travel to see a total eclipse, you can head down on October, I think it's 26th. You can see a total eclipse in southern America. On the Patagonia, in the southern tip of Argentina, we'll see a total eclipse. And if you want to just wait until the next in North America, the next great one is going to be in the year 2044, August 23rd. Is when there'll be a total eclipse going from Northern California right down to southern Florida.
Andrew, thank you very much for being on the program with us once again.
My pleasure. Clear skies.
Andrew Fazekas, the Night Sky Guy. You can go to my website at thestuffile.com to the page for this show, which is show number 0763, and you'll find links to Andrew's site to get your own personal autographed copy of his books. You're listening to the Stuff File program with me, Peter Anthony Holder. And boys and girls, it's that moment you've all been waiting for. It's time now for the Idiot of the Day.
And now it's time for the strange things adults do. The Stuff File presents the Idiot of the Day.
3 men from Philadelphia were arrested on charges this week of breaking into the home of a couple back in January and robbing them at gunpoint. 23-year-old Julio Mendoza, 20-year-old Louis Armstrong, and 21-year-old Axel Reyes were charged. Now, back on January 8th, 3 armed masked men entered the house at around 2 a.m. The 3 allegedly told the homeowners they had taken their daughter hostage and would kill the couple if they didn't give up their cash and other valuables. The husband told the men that his money was located at his business. He and his wife were then blindfolded and tied up, and the 3 men drove them to the business in the couple's Mercedes. At the business, the husband gave the men 3 envelopes containing a total of $19,500 in cash. The 3 then allegedly drove the couple back home and tore through the house to find more valuables. They took another $8,000 in cash, $2,000 worth of jewelry, 3 firearms, designer clothing, and a pair of Apple AirPods. When the robbers left the home, they left the couple tied up in their attic and stole the Mercedes. Investigators traced the Mercedes back to Philadelphia by piecing together information from automated license plate readers, which scan plates and help authorities track down vehicles involved in crimes. Police also used Apple's Find My app in order to pick up the location of the stolen AirPods. So, let me cut to the chase after this fine police work. The cops tracked the car, tracked the headphones, knew where Mendoza lived, raided the home, and found more than $13,000 in cash, plus stolen merch. But here's the dumb part. Investigators later learned Mendoza and Reyes were cousins. Text messages found on their phones showed that they planned the robbery and appeared to know details about the property. Plus, a photo found on one of the phones showed one of the masked robbers sitting on top of the Mercedes with cash fanned out in his hands. Detectives identified Mendoza and Reyes using fingerprints from the Mercedes, and they allege that Armstrong was recruited by Mendoza to help carry out the robbery. All 3 are behind bars on a host of charges. So, the question has to be asked, why? Oh, why? Would you document the planning of the crime and the results of your crimes in text messages and photos on your phone? One reason, and one reason only: you're idiots!
Gee, I'm only a kid, but even I know you're an idiot.
And that's it for this edition of the Stuff File program, number 0763. Hope you enjoyed it. The website is thestufffile.com, and once again, stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H, where you'll find information and links on all of our guests by going to the weekly Stuff File page. Just look for the corresponding program number, and once again, that's 0763. Email me at peter@thestufffile.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Spoutable, Post, Mastodon, and Blue Sky as PA Holder. Check us out on patreon.com, where you can become a patron of the program. Hope to see you back here for our next show on the air, online, or as a download. We're coming to you from everywhere, including KDXRadio.com, TrueTalkRadio.com, over the air on World FM in New Zealand, WLSLLP FM in Dade City, Florida, KZZHLP FM in Eureka, California, CKUW FM in Winnipeg, CFMU in Hamilton, CKLU in Sudbury, Local 107.3 FM in St. John, CHSR in Fredericton, and also streaming on just about any streaming service your little heart desires. That's it. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Stuff File program with Peter Anthony Holder, a presentation of Flying Fish Communications. Please remember that in just 2 days, tomorrow will be yesterday.